Hello there. Well, in this video, I'm going to be answering a question that was left on my Facebook timeline by one of my Facebook friends. And this person asks, can you do a video on JW thinking as to Trump getting in office and believing it's a sign of the end? I'm hearing this undertone from among certain ones. So I guess I can quite easily imagine Jehovah's Witnesses getting excited when they see potentially cataclysmic things unfolding. And whether you love Trump or loathe him, I personally can't stand the guy, surely there can be some consensus that there seems to be a little bit more uncertainty now on the world scene when it comes to the way the current US administration is going to deal with things. So if we boil this question down to, will the presidency of Donald Trump bring on Armageddon? The simple answer to that is no, but there's a caveat. So let me first explain why that's not going to happen. Very simply, if you're a Jehovah's Witness watching this and you're wondering, oh, maybe Donald Trump will bring on Armageddon, you really need to think for a moment about what Armageddon is, what it entails, and what it's based on. So you may have very cherished beliefs about Armageddon and about the paradise, but it's worthwhile for you to just subject those beliefs to a little bit of scrutiny and think them through to their logical conclusion. So according to Jehovah's Witness beliefs, everybody who doesn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness will be massacred at Armageddon. Now, there's been people who've been contesting that on previous videos. Do the research, go on Watchtower Library, and make it your own personal research project. Try to answer the question, who will survive Armageddon? And I think you'll find when you do your research that only Jehovah's Witnesses are to survive Armageddon. And when I say only Jehovah's Witnesses, that it's by no means a given that just being a Jehovah's Witness will get you through Armageddon. That's how close this thing is. If it was just a case of saving everyone who's good, regardless of their religious affiliation, there would be no need for the preaching work, if you think about it. You could just have Armageddon and then afterwards debrief everyone who made it through. You wouldn't need to change anyone's religion. So let's get that straightened out from the beginning. Armageddon, from a Jehovah's Witness point of view, is the death of everybody who isn't a Jehovah's Witness. So you need to think about what that entails. There's over 7 billion people on the planet, and there are only 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses. So whichever way you look at it, there are going to be billions of people, arguably 7 billion at least, who are going to die at Armageddon. You need to feel comfortable with that if you're a Jehovah's Witness, with that scale of carnage, men, women and children. You also need to feel comfortable with, after Armageddon, being involved in, concealing the evidence of the worst massacre that's ever taken place and, getting the human bodies out of sight. And I've covered in previous videos, and I cover it in my book as well, what the governing body members have to say on that, because there's even suggestions that there'll be teams of Jehovah's Witnesses whose job will be nothing but burying all of these carcasses. Imagine how many carcasses, for example, there'll be in New York City. There'll be mountains of bodies, and that will be paradise, at least for a good few months or years after Armageddon. Your paradise will be getting rid of the remains. So I'm going to some lengths here to just try and explain to you why we can get rid of this whole idea of Armageddon happening. It's just not feasible. The God who would be responsible for instigating Armageddon would not be worth worshipping, according to the picture that's painted when we think about Jehovah's Witness beliefs to their logical conclusion. That is not a God of love. You know, there's nothing to be proud of in spending the rest of eternity praising the perpetrator of the worst act of genocide ever committed in the universe. So let's get that out of the way. Now, returning to the question, will the presidency of Donald Trump bring about Armageddon? The caveat is that it's not completely impossible. And I only say that because, you know, Armageddon could be considered not just as a Jehovah's Witness teaching, but when many people think of Armageddon, they think about the end of civilization as we know it. Now, I personally don't believe it's likely that in only 4 years, Donald Trump can have that effect on the planet. I think it's doubtful. I think there is sufficient momentum in opposing some of his more extreme policies to give me confidence that he's not going to cause too much damage. I'm hoping, but the caveat is that you can never say that it's impossible. And one of the things that I find so frustrating about religion in general is that the things like Armageddon, even though they're not real, they can become real purely through the fanaticism of human beings when it comes to religion. You just look up self-fulfilling prophecy and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Human beings can make their worst fears come true simply by believing in them. You know, they can make prophecy become true just by willing it to happen. And we're seeing it with radical fundamentalist Islam, with people wanting to build a caliphate, with people wanting to bring on the Last Judgment. You know, fundamentalist, jihadist, Islamist Muslims, which is only a small minority, thankfully, but that minority of Muslims really do want to see the destruction of civilization as we know it. That will be a good thing for them. We see it as well in some branches of Christianity. You see fundamentalist Christians who are supporting instability in the Middle East, who are supporting the building of illegal settlements in Palestinian territory, because they want as much instability in that region as possible, because they genuinely believe that the armies of the world will amass in Megiddo and bring on the apocalypse. But the tragic thing is that even though what's in their heads is just a figment of their imagination, it's just delusion, it can have real effects in the real world. It can create genuine instability, and is creating genuine instability in Israel and Palestine. And that's the tragedy of religion in general, is that it's based on delusion, it's based on fantasy, it's based on just myths that have been passed down from generation to generation. But the effects these beliefs have on people, on human lives, on families, are very, very real and very tangible. And that's one of the tragedies really of religion, is that even people who, like myself, who escape religion, still feel its effects. So in my own case, I still feel the effects of the punishment from Watchtower in terms of shunning, even though I've completely left my beliefs in Jehovah's Witness teachings behind. So, you know, short summary, no, Donald Trump isn't going to bring on Armageddon, at least not the Armageddon that Jehovah's Witnesses think. But we do need to think seriously about self-fulfilled prophecy and let that motivate us to resist religious fanaticism as much as possible and try and mitigate the damage it's doing. And I think that there's so many reasons for positivity and optimism when we look at some of the more, I hesitate to use the word progressive because it has mixed connotations nowadays, but when you look at progressive elements and people who are genuinely trying to move humanity forward, I think that there are, regardless of who is president at the moment in America, I think that there are reasons for optimism. So that was just my babbling on that subject. I hope you found this video interesting, and as always, thank you for watching.